When the cart broke loose on that muddy morning, every worker at Ashford Ridge froze in horror. Men shouted. Someone slipped trying to reach the rail. Someone yelled, "Stop the boy!" But no one was close enough. Everyone saw the truth too late. Rowan, the little 7-year-old who trusted every creature he met, was kneeling directly in the cart's deadly path. And the only one who moved wasn't a man at all. It was the dog they all feared. The broken K9 who snapped chains, failed every test, and flinched at his own shadow. The dog no trainer could reach, no evaluator could calm. Bran, the one everyone had labeled too far gone. But in that moment, with the ground shaking and the world screaming danger, Bran didn't hesitate. He sprinted, not to flee, but to shield the child who believed in him. The impossible was about to happen. A thin curtain of late autumn fog hugged the abandoned coal mine at Ashford Ridge. The old mine sat like a giant skeleton carved into the mountainside, its rust-eaten carts and crooked rail tracks stretching into the grayness like broken ribs. Wind slid through the hollow shafts, carrying with it the metallic scent of iron and something older, something tired. At the far edge of the site stood a makeshift rehabilitation outpost, surrounded by patched fencing and dented kennels. It wasn't meant to be pretty. It was meant to be the last chance for creatures the world had given up on. Inside the largest enclosure paced Bran, a 6-year-old German shepherd with a thick black and tan coat matted by old dust and new frustration. He was massive, nearly 35 kilos of coiled muscle and trauma, wrapped inside a canine frame that once stood proud. Scars carved faint trails along his muzzle, relics of training bites and a life spent on duty. His golden eyes, however, were what unsettled most men. They carried a haunted sharpness, the look of someone stuck between remembering and resisting memory. Every few seconds, Bran let out a low growl, not aimed at anyone in particular, but at ghosts only he could see. The dog had once served with a police unit in a distant city, and whatever had happened there left a violent shadow inside him, one that still pulled at him like a chain. A rumbling engine crawled up the muddy incline leading into the mine yard. The headlights of an aging blue pickup truck sliced through the fog before sputtering to a stop beside a stack of coal crates. The driver's door creaked open, and Thatcher Price stepped out. A man in his late 30s with a sturdy, broad-shouldered build, softened by exhaustion. His brown hair was sun-faded, his beard patchy, and deep grooves sat permanently etched between his eyebrows. Thatcher carried the kind of weariness that didn't come from age but from starting over too many times. Life had batted him around. Small jobs, a layoff, a bad year. Yet something steady and decent still lived behind his grayish blue eyes. A man who tried, no matter how many times the world told him trying wouldn't help. The passenger door slammed as Rowan Price, his 7-year-old son, hopped out of the truck. Rowan was small for his age, with a mop of wavy black hair that defied any attempt to be tamed and skin lightly freckled across the cheeks. His eyes, large, bright, and always curious, darted across the mining yard as if every rock held a story. In his hands, he clutched a dented red toy truck, its paint chipped, its wheels slightly crooked. He carried it everywhere, treating it less like a toy and more like a companion who had seen all his adventures. Rowan's energy burst immediately into motion. He ran to a pile of coal gravel, scrunching it with his boots, blowing the black dust into tiny storms. Thatcher called after him with a tired but affectionate voice, reminding him to stay close, but Rowan was already on his next discovery. An old conveyor belt, a tangled chain, a puddle that he insisted had the shape of a dragon. He was the kind of child who didn't simply walk through the world. He investigated it. Merritt Lang, the head trainer, leaned against a metal post nearby, observing the scene with narrowed eyes. He was a tall, wiry man in his late 50s, with a pepper-gray beard, sun-beaten skin, and arms ropey with sinew. Merritt had worked with dangerous animals his whole life, fractious stallions, wounded rescue dogs, even a half-wild bull once, and he bore the scars to prove it. His expression always seemed stern, carved into seriousness by years of dealing with creatures on the edge. Though not unkind, he was a man shaped by caution rather than warmth. "Thatcher," Merritt called, his deep voice scraping like gravel. "Keep the boy away from the pens. That one," he pointed at Bran, who now stood rigid inside the enclosure, "isn't like the others." Thatcher nodded. "Understood." But Rowan wasn't listening. Something, some instinct, some pull, had already turned his head toward Bran's enclosure. It happened the moment Rowan ran past the kennels. He halted mid-stride. Not because of fear, Rowan rarely feared animals, but because of the stillness. Bran, who moments ago had been pacing violently, suddenly froze. His body stiffened, ears tilting forward, golden eyes narrowing as if struggling to remember something buried deep. Rowan slowly lowered his toy truck, mesmerized by the enormous dog staring at him through the fog-blurred fencing. Merritt reacted instantly. "Boy, don't get near him!" But Rowan didn't move closer. He simply stood there, his small hands wrapped around the red toy truck, his breath fogging lightly in the cold air. He whispered, not bravely, not fearfully, but honestly, "I'm not going to hurt you." Bran didn't growl. He didn't lunge. He didn't retreat. He just watched the boy with a stillness so unnatural the nearby workers stiffened. For the first time that morning, the haunted light in Bran's eyes flickered, not softening, not brightening, but shifting, as if recognizing a silhouette from another life. Thatcher hurried over, placing a firm hand on Rowan's shoulder as Merritt and the other workers exchanged uneasy looks. They had seen Bran snarl at seasoned handlers, threaten steel doors, and react violently to shadows. But this was different. The great dog remained unmoving, muscles tense not from aggression, but from something quieter, confusion, memory, or maybe a strange, reluctant curiosity. Rowan tilted his head slightly, eyes widening in that way only children possess when they sense something adults cannot. For a moment, the two, boy and broken dog, stood in silent acknowledgement, connected by something neither could name. And somewhere under the fog, in the belly of the abandoned mine, the wind shifted as if warning that the story between them had only just begun. The wind rushed down from the ridge in restless waves, rattling the rusted tin sheets of the old mine structures like a warning whispered through metal. Merritt Lang stood in the center of the cracked concrete training yard, boots planted wide, jaw tight. The late afternoon sun struggled against the fog, creating an eerie bronze glow over the square. Behind him, two ranch hands, Lyle Barton and Carrie Dullamont, waited with equipment in hand. Lyle, a stocky man with a shaved head and hands roughened from years of farm labor, was known for his nervous chuckle and tendency to avoid direct conflict. Carrie, in contrast, was tall and sharp-eyed, her brown hair tied tightly under a faded cap, with a personality as direct as the hammer she often carried to repair broken gates. They were both accustomed to rowdy animals, but neither liked being assigned to Bran. Bran stood at the far end of the enclosure, his chain clipped to a reinforced anchor. The 6-year-old shepherd's body was trembling, though not from cold. His ears flicked sharply at every metallic scrape, every gust of wind slamming into the structures around them. His chest heaved in rapid, uneven rhythms, the way an overworked machine sputters before breaking. A few paces beyond the yard, Rowan Price played along the raised concrete lip that bordered the training area. The boy crouched low, pushing his battered toy truck along the edge, murmuring imaginary engine noises. His hair danced wildly in the wind, but he didn't seem bothered. If anything, the wilder the gusts grew, the more excited he became. Thatcher Price watched from the sidelines, trying to remain calm but ready to spring into action. He knew his son, Rowan's curiosity, was bigger than his caution, a trait that Thatcher admired and feared in equal measure. Merritt raised a hand, signaling Lyle. "All right, noise test. Let's see how he handles an environmental trigger today." Lyle hesitated, swallowing. "You sure about the wind today, Merritt?" He's already keyed up. Merritt shot him a look, the kind that ended discussions. "We don't get to pick the weather. The world won't be quiet for him." Carrie muttered, "Sure doesn't look quiet for anyone right now," but she stepped back to give space. Lyle lifted a metal sheet, an old mining scrap repurposed for training, and let it drop hard against the concrete. The explosion of sound blasted across the yard. Bran reacted instantly, spine arched, teeth bared, eyes flaring with pure panic. He lunged backward, then forward, then twisted in frantic confusion, barking so violently the sound cracked through the wind. His chain jerked taut, clanging against the anchor bolt as though begging to snap. Rowan paused his toy truck, eyes widening. He didn't scream, but his small body stiffened, the way children often do when instinct whispers danger. Merritt stepped forward, voice firm. "Easy, Bran. Focus here. Focus." But Bran couldn't hear him. The wind slammed another tin sheet, and the memory inside the dog ignited like dry coal. Carrie cursed quietly. "He's not processing. He's somewhere else entirely." Merritt knew she was right. He'd seen that look on soldiers long ago, back when he was younger and thought working with humans would be easier than working with animals. He had left those years behind, but Bran's eyes carried the same battlefield confusion he once saw in the eyes of men who had survived too much. Another blast of wind slammed a hanging grate, and everything broke at once. A loose safety screen, propped earlier but not properly secured, caught a violent gust, lifted like a wing, then slammed down against Bran's chain. The impact jolted the clasp, and with a metallic snap, the lock burst open. "Brace!" Merritt shouted. Bran spun, disoriented, and burst forward. No direction, no target, just escape. And unfortunately, Rowan was directly in his path. The ranch hands scattered. Lyle tripped backward, swearing. Carrie grabbed a pole but froze at the sight of Rowan's small figure standing right at the edge of the yard. Thatcher ran, hard, the look on his face twisted into terror, a kind of primal fear only a parent feels. "Rowan, move!" he shouted. But Rowan didn't run. For a second, one terrifying second, he couldn't. His toy truck slipped from his hands, clattering onto the concrete. He hugged himself instinctively, breathing fast, his bravado drowned by the storm and the enormous animal hurtling toward him. Bran thundered across the yard, paws scraping, claws throwing sparks, breath ragged. His teeth weren't bared in attack. He wasn't charging out of rage. He was charging because the world around him was collapsing in noise, and he didn't know where safety was. But to everyone watching, that distinction didn't matter. What they saw was a massive, terrified dog racing at a 7-year-old child. Merritt yelled, "Intercept him!" But no one was fast enough. The wind screamed, metal howled. Bran closed the last few feet. Rowan lifted his hand, not brave, not commanding, just instinctively reaching towards something he didn't understand, but didn't fear. A child's gesture of connection, not dominance. "Stop," he whispered, voice trembling. And Bran did. He didn't skid as violently as before, but the halt was still sudden enough that his claws carved white scratches into the concrete. He froze, chest pumping, head low, not in threat, but in confusion. His eyes darted from Rowan's trembling hand to the toy truck lying at the boy's feet, then back to Rowan's face. Something flickered inside the dog, a fragment of memory, a flash of another child, a different frightened pair of eyes from a night long gone. Rowan swallowed hard. "It's okay. You're okay." Merritt watched with a stunned expression, a rarity for a man who prided himself on never being surprised. "By all the saints," he muttered, "he shouldn't be responding like this." Bran's breathing slowed, not fully, but enough to pull him away from the edge. His ears twitched, his shoulders relaxed. The panic in his eyes dimmed into hesitant recognition. Thatcher reached Rowan and pulled him back, clutching him tightly, breath shaking. Rowan didn't fight him, his legs were jelly, but his gaze stayed locked on Bran's. Bran didn't lunge again, didn't growl, didn't retreat. He simply stood there staring at the boy, as though trying to match him to a memory shaped by fear and regret. A wind gust blew dust between them, swirling like ash. But neither Rowan nor Bran broke eye contact. Everyone felt it, even if no one dared to say it aloud. Something had shifted, something neither logic, training, nor instinct could fully explain. And as the metal screamed again in the wind, the yard fell into a strange, breathless stillness, one that marked the beginning of a bond none of them had expected. Rain slid down the warped tin roof of the enclosure like black ink, each drop carrying the coal dust that clung to every surface of Ashford Ridge. Night settled over the abandoned mine in a deep, breathless quiet, broken only by the distant groan of shifting metal and the occasional rumble of thunder rolling beyond the mountains. Inside his kennel, Bran lay curled against the far corner, his body tense despite exhaustion. The soft pulses of lightning illuminated his thick coat in pale flashes, revealing the ridges of muscle and the subtle tremors that rippled down his spine. His ears flattened at every low thunderclap. For others, storms were noise. For Bran, storms were a doorway to memory. And those memories were not kind. With his head resting on his paws, his eyes drifted half shut. But the images came anyway. Greyhaven, the coastal city where he once served, rose in his mind like a jagged shadow. He could almost smell the wet asphalt, the mix of salt water and engine fumes, the sharp odor of fear that followed him on certain calls. Then came the memory he never outran, the rescue operation 2 years prior. A small apartment building, cracked pavement, flashing emergency lights. The suspect had barricaded himself in a back room, holding a boy of about 6 hostage. Bran could still picture the trembling child's dirty sneakers, the tear tracks on his cheeks, the wild, frayed look in the man's eyes. Then he remembered Officer Dorian Vale, the handler who had trusted him more than anyone. Dorian had been a man in his mid-30s, tall, square-jawed, with a thick beard that he trimmed every Sunday, and eyes that carried a soldier's steadiness. Years of military service had carved discipline into his bones, but a softness remained when he spoke to Bran. Dorian's voice was the compass that guided the dog through everything, until that night. Bran, go! The command had been firm, confident, meant to save. Bran had launched forward like a bullet. The gunshot that followed split the air. The little boy crumpled, more shocked than wounded. Bran tackled the suspect, teeth sinking into fabric, metal clattering as the weapon hit the floor. But then the boy's scream, shrill, raw, shattered something inside him. Don't let the dog near me. Not gratitude, not relief, only fear. Fear of him. The memory clawed inside Bran now, the rain outside mimicking the rhythm of that night. His breath grew shallow. His paws dug reflexively at the dirt floor. He didn't know how to escape the memory because it lived inside him like a splinter, lodged too deep to remove. But then, in the present, soft footsteps approached. Rowan Price arrived each morning like a burst of chaotic sunshine. But tonight, well past sunset, he appeared with a flashlight in hand, the beam wobbling across the muddy ground. Thatcher Price walked behind him, looking more tired than usual. His jacket was soaked, hair plastered to his forehead. Rowan, I said 5 minutes, Thatcher muttered, though without real frustration. Merritt will have my hide if he catches you out here after hours. Rowan ignored him in that uniquely 7-year-old way that wasn't disrespectful, just determined. He carried a small carton of chocolate milk in one hand and his toy truck in the other. His sneakers squelched in the mud, leaving messy prints that made Thatcher sigh. The boy stopped in front of Bran's kennel. Hey, buddy, you awake? Rowan whispered, crouching down. Bran lifted his head slowly, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. The storm rumbled again, and he flinched. Rowan noticed instantly. Are you scared? He asked, tilting his head. It's okay, I get scared too, but my dad says being scared just means you're paying attention. Thatcher huffed a quiet laugh behind him. Not exactly how I said it, he murmured, but Rowan wasn't listening. Rowan scooted closer, resting his elbows on his knees. He didn't try to put his fingers through the fence this time. Merritt's rules still echoed in his father's warnings, but he leaned close enough for Bran to see him without shadows distorting his shape. "You know, lightning freaks me out," Rowan continued. "One time the storm hit the transformer near our old apartment, and the whole place smelled like burnt toast for a week." He wrinkled his nose. It was gross. Something in the boy's rambling softened Bran's posture. Not entirely, but enough. Rowan reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled sticker, a bright green robot holding a shield. "You remind me of that robot," he said. "He's super strong, but his wiring gets weird when it storms. Kinda like you." Thatcher groaned. "Rowan." But Bran blinked, the memory storm inside him easing slightly. Rowan held up the sticker. "I found this on my desk this morning. Thought maybe you'd like it, 'cause you're brave, even if you don't feel like it." Thatcher watched quietly, seeing the dog's slow breathing, the shift in his eyes. The man had always had a soft heart for struggling creatures, maybe because he understood what starting over felt like. And Bran, with his scars and haunted gaze, reminded him of those battered dogs he rescued as a teenager with his late grandfather. It stirred something old in him, something hopeful. A new figure approached, stepping carefully across the puddles. Elmer Hawthorne, the night watchman, was short and barrel-chested, with a thick mustache and a perpetual smell of tobacco. His weather-beaten face creased into hundreds of tiny lines whenever he frowned, which was often. Elmer wasn't unkind, but years working security at rough job sites had made him distrustful by habit. The world, he believed, went wrong whenever people weren't careful enough. He cleared his throat. "Thatcher boy shouldn't be out here in this storm. Merritt will throw a fit." Rowan scoffed. "I'm not doing anything bad. I'm helping him." He pointed a thumb at Bran. Elmer raised a skeptical brow. "That dog nearly tore the anchor bolt out yesterday." Rowan puffed out his cheeks stubbornly. "'Cause he was scared, not 'cause he's bad." Elmer blinked at that response, caught off guard. Children had a way of stripping complicated things down to their simplest truths. He rubbed the back of his neck but didn't argue. Thunder rolled again. Bran shuddered. Rowan's face softened. "It's okay," he repeated, lowering his voice even more. "The storm can't get you here." He hesitated, then added something he'd never said aloud. "You know, sometimes I wish someone told me that when I got scared. Maybe you do too." Thatcher froze, realizing Rowan wasn't only talking to Bran. The dog in the kennel lowered his head until his nose almost touched the ground, a gesture neither submissive nor fearful, more like trust, a small, fragile, new kind of trust. Lightning flashed, but Bran didn't jerk this time. He kept his eyes on Rowan as if the boy's voice anchored him, pulling him away from Greyhaven, from the screaming boy, from the guilt. A connection formed, tentative, quiet, but unmistakably real. And though the storm raged outside, the world around Rowan and Bran grew strangely still. The sky hung low over Ashford Ridge, a dull sheet of pewter broken occasionally by thin veins of pale light. Though the rain had stopped hours ago, the air remained thick with dampness, carrying the metallic scent of wet iron and coal dust. Puddles clung stubbornly to the cracked concrete of the training yard, reflecting the warped silhouettes of men gathering for a test no one wanted to conduct, but all were required to witness. Merritt Lang stood at the center of the yard, shoulders drawn tight beneath his rain-darkened work jacket. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper today, etched not by age, but by dread. He had tamed horses that tried to kill him, bulls that would sooner break a rib than blink, and dogs whose scars told stories no handler had ever heard. But Bran was something else, not wicked, not feral, just shattered in a way Merritt still struggled to understand. Across from him, 3 county evaluators arranged the required testing instruments. They arrived in a state-issued gray SUV, stepping out with an air of clinical detachment that made Merritt grind his teeth. The team consisted of Dr. Paxton Reed, Janice Morell, and Owen Hargreaves. Dr. Paxton Reed, middle-aged, short, impeccably dressed despite the mud, had a stiff silver mustache and round spectacles that slipped down his nose. He was known for his cold precision, often described as a man who trusted paperwork more than people. Janice Morrell, younger and meticulous, wore her auburn hair in a low twist, her posture disciplined from years of working in structured environments. She carried a clipboard against her chest like a shield. Owen Hargreaves, the tallest of the three, had a lean frame and soft, tired eyes. A faint scar ran across his chin, reminder of a time early in his career when a panicked rescue dog had misunderstood his intentions. Unlike the others, Owen approached animals slowly, respectfully. Bran was led into the yard on a reinforced chain by Carrie Dullamont. The German shepherd's coat was still damp, clinging slightly to the contours of his muscular frame. He looked enormous against the grayness of the morning, head low, tail neither tucked nor raised, just uncertain. His eyes flicked restlessly from person to person. Every shifting shadow made him tense. Every sudden movement caused a tremor along his spine. Rowan and Thatcher stood behind the tall fence, Rowan's hands gripping the cold metal bars. His navy hoodie was still damp at the sleeves where he'd wiped droplets earlier, and his toy truck protruded from his pocket, crusted with dried mud. His father kept one hand around the back of Rowan's hood, half to keep him close and half to restrain him if he tried anything reckless, which, knowing Rowan, he would. Dr. Reed stepped forward, his voice clipped. "We will now begin the behavioral risk evaluation for subject Bran, file number K9’s. You all know the process. 3 strikes. Should Bran fail to de-escalate by the 3rd marker, the case will be classified as non-rehabilitative." Merritt's jaw tightened. He wanted to say something, but Owen Hargreaves gave him a small, understanding nod. It wasn't enough to calm Merritt, but it kept him silent. Janice raised a hand. "First trigger." Owen moved behind Bran, blowing a sharp blast on a training whistle. The sound pierced the damp air like a slap. Bran jerked violently, claws scraping across the concrete. His muscles coiled like springs pulled too tight. His ears flattened and a guttural bark reverberated from deep within his chest. "That's strike 1, Janice announced. Bran thrashed once more before Carrie steadied his chain with both hands, boots digging into the slick ground. She muttered something under her breath, whether to Bran or to herself it was unclear. "Second trigger," Dr. Reed said. Merritt stepped in reluctantly, taking a wooden baton and striking it against the metal barrier. The metallic clang shot through the yard, echoing off the mine walls like a gunshot. Bran's reaction was immediate and devastating. He lunged sideways, teeth flashing, eyes wild with a terror so raw that even Dr. Reed paused. The dog's bark turned to a broken, frantic sound, more scream than growl. "Strike 2, Janice said, her voice wavering slightly. Rowan pressed his face closer to the bars. "Dad?" "He's scared." Thatcher looked at Bran with a tightened throat. "I know, kiddo, I know." Dr. Reed adjusted his glasses. "Third trigger." Owen hesitated. "With respect, sir, the dog is already in survival mode. A third trigger could—" "Protocol!" Reed snapped. Reluctantly, Owen stepped forward, raising a training shield. The moment he lifted it, Bran's eyes widened, and every muscle in his body stiffened. He remembered a shield like that. From Grey Haven, from the night he lost the boy's trust forever. Bran backed up, then shot forward, panic taking the reins. Carrie lost her footing, her boot sliding on wet concrete. The chain slipped through her grip. Merritt cursed. "He's going to bolt." Bran lowered his stance, preparing to lunge. But before the evaluators could react, before Merritt could dive for the chain, before Thatcher could restrain Rowan, Rowan wriggled free. The small boy slipped under the lowest rung of the fence with the speed of a startled fox. "Rowan!" Thatcher shouted, voice cracking with panic. The evaluators froze. Bran froze too, mid-lunge, muscles straining, paws gouging the ground. His breath came in harsh bursts. Rain from earlier glistened along his back like shards of glass. Rowan ran across the slick concrete, almost slipping, but he didn't stop. His toy truck bounced out of his pocket and clattered out behind him. He spread his arms wide, not in defiance, but in a strange gesture of bravery only a child could summon. "Bran, don't be scared. I'm here." The words cut through the air like a lifeline. Bran's eyes locked onto the small figure skidding toward him. Something in Rowan's voice, not the words but the honesty, reached into the dog's frantic mind and pulled. Bran's body shook. His lips stopped curling, his tail lowered, his breath steadied, and slowly, agonizingly slowly, he lowered his rear and sat. The entire yard went silent. Rowan reached him, placed a small, mud-streaked hand atop Bran's head, and whispered, "It's okay now." The rainwater on Bran's fur made Rowan's palm cold, but Bran leaned into the touch with a trembling exhale. Owen Hargreaves stared in awe. The boy is the stabilizer. His presence overrides the trauma. Janice stepped back, stunned. This is unprecedented. Dr. Reed adjusted his glasses again, but this time there was no confidence in the gesture. Strike 3 is dismissed. This case does not qualify for termination. Merritt let out a shaky breath that misted in the cold air. Well, I'll be damned. But Rowan wasn't listening. He wrapped both arms around Bran's neck, hugging him tightly. Bran leaned his head gently against the boy's chest, eyes half closed, in the first genuine calm he'd felt in years. It was a moment no test, no clipboard, and no protocol could explain. The decision had been made. Bran's fate had changed, and everyone present knew it. The morning after the storm dawned strangely gentle, leaving Ashford Ridge caught between sunlight and lingering damp. The mine yard glistened where puddles clung stubbornly to the uneven ground, and the slopes of loose earth above the rail tracks sagged with the softness left behind by the night's heavy rain. Though the air felt lighter, the ground beneath it carried its own quiet warning. One wrong shift, one careless step, and the mud could slide in an instant. Rowan Price sat cross-legged in front of Bran's enclosure, his jeans already smeared with wet dirt from a morning of playing before anyone else had finished their coffee. He held up his battered red toy truck, its chipped paint catching a sliver of sun. "If you get strong again," he said with a grin that showed one missing front tooth, "I bet you'd run faster than this thing." Bran stared at the small truck with a sort of solemn curiosity. His ears relaxed and his posture calm. The dog's thick coat had regained a bit of its sheen after days of better care, though traces of past stress still lingered in the stiffness of his shoulders. Yet around Rowan there was something new, something steadier, like a bridge being rebuilt one plank at a time. Up the slope, several workers were unloading stone debris from a rail cart. Part of ongoing cleanup Merritt insisted was overdue by 5 years. One of these workers, Hugo Marin, was a broad-shouldered man with a sandy beard and heavy boots that thumped the earth like slow drumbeats. Hugo was quiet by nature, preferring to work more than talk, but everyone respected him because he had survived a landslide accident 10 years earlier that had left a deep scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheek. He'd been cautious ever since, always checking the soil, always listening for warning groans from the slope. But today, perhaps from distraction or fatigue, Hugo misjudged the locking pin on the old rail cart. As he moved away, a soft metallic rattle vibrated down the track. The pin jerked free. The cart began to roll, slowly at first, then faster. Hugo turned, horror widening his eyes. "Look out! Cart's loose!" he roared, his deep voice cracking through the yard. Heads snapped up. Merritt Lang, standing near the office steps, reacted with a sharp curse. "Grab it! Stop it!" But the slope was slick with mud, and no one was close enough to intercept the cart barreling down the rusted track. And at the bottom of that track, directly in its deadly path, was Rowan Price, still kneeling in front of Bran's enclosure, blissfully unaware, holding up his toy truck to show how its wheels spun. Thatcher Price, 20 yards away, felt his stomach plunge as if the earth dropped under him. "Rowan, move!" he bellowed, sprinting harder than he had in years. Rowan turned, confused for a heartbeat, long enough that the rumble of wheels on rusted steel filled the air like a warning drum, but something else heard first. Bran. His ears shot up, his pupils flared. In a single instant, instinct overcame everything. Fear, memory, training, trauma. The world narrowed to one truth. The boy was in danger. With a roar of motion, Bran lunged against the kennel door. The latch, weakened from days of his panic-driven assaults, snapped loose. The metal door flew open with a harsh squeal. Bran launched forward. He sprinted across the uneven ground, mud spraying beneath his paws. Every muscle moved with single-minded purpose, not aggression, but protection. An instinct older than commands, older than fear. Rowan froze in place as the thunder of wheels grew louder. Bran collided with him just in time, driving the boy sideways onto a patch of soft, damp earth. The cart roared past, missing Rowan by inches, then veered off the track and toppled onto its side with a crash that sent dust and pebbles flying. Silence fell, stunned, heavy silence. Bran rolled from the impact, his legs muddied, his breath ragged, but even as he staggered, he pivoted to put his body between Rowan and the fallen cart. His lips curled, not in rage, but in a warning to the steel monster that had dared threaten the child he had chosen. Rowan's breath hitched, tears welled up but didn't fall. He scrambled forward and threw his arms around Bran's thick neck. "You're really a hero," he whispered through a trembling smile. "You saved me." Thatcher reached them moments later, skidding in the mud, voice shaking as he checked his son. "You okay? You okay?" Rowan nodded, still hugging Bran. Hugo Marin knelt nearby, guilt heavy in his posture. "I swear I checked the pin. I don't know how I missed it." His scarred face carried a shadow of old trauma, the near-death experience that had taught him to always be careful. Today, that failure cut deeply. Merritt stepped forward, rubbing the bridge of his nose as he stared at Bran with an expression halfway between disbelief and pride. "That dog," he muttered, "that damn dog just saved a kid's life." The yard buzzed with shaken whispers. Even the sky seemed to brighten, as if washing away the moment's darkness. That evening, under the golden glow of the office lamp, Merritt pulled out the thick binder of rehabilitation reports. His handwriting, always sharp, always stern, softened as he signed the final line. Bran, fully rehabilitated, approved for adoption. Thatcher knelt beside Rowan in the cramped office, his heart still unsteady from fear and relief. "Rowan," he said gently, "I need to ask you something real important." He met his son's wide brown eyes. "Do you want Bran to come home with us?" Rowan didn't hesitate. His grin was immediate, honest, bright. "Dad, he already is home. He picked us." Thatcher swallowed hard, overwhelmed by the simple truth. The sun dipped toward the horizon as the Price family stepped out of the office. The mine yard glowed with amber light. Bran walked beside Rowan without a leash, matching the boy's small steps with careful ones of his own. His head hung low, not in fear, but in quiet companionship. Rowan reached up to pat him. "No more scary sirens at the new house," he said. "Just snacks, and maybe cartoons." Bran released a soft chuff, a dog's version of a relieved sigh. His golden eyes shimmered warm, no longer filled with ghosts of Greyhaven, but with something gentler, something like hope. He was no longer a dangerous, untamable creature. He was a friend, a protector, a soul stitched back together by the steady, unwavering kindness of a boy who simply refused to fear him. And together they walked toward a new home. Sometimes miracles don't roar like thunder or fall from the heavens in shining light. Sometimes they arrive quietly on four muddy paws, with golden eyes that once carried fear, but learn to trust again because one small child chose to love without hesitation. In a world filled with noise, rush, and worry, we often forget how powerful a simple act of kindness can be. A gentle word, a steady hand, a heart willing to see the good in someone who has been hurt. Bran's journey reminds us that God often works through the smallest among us, through innocence and compassion that we adults sometimes lose along the way. Maybe the miracle wasn't that Bran found a home. Maybe the real miracle is that Rowan arrived at the exact moment a wounded soul needed him, as if placed there by a hand far greater than ours. And just like that, a broken creature learned to hope again. In our daily lives, may we look a little closer at the people and animals around us. There are hearts carrying wounds we cannot see. There are souls waiting for someone to believe in them. And perhaps God is whispering to us too, go to them, heal them, make room for grace. If this story warmed your heart, please share it with someone who might need a reminder of hope today. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing your stories. And if you'd like more tales of courage, redemption, and the miracles God still places in our world, please subscribe to the channel. May the Lord bless you, protect you, and guide your steps. May His grace shine upon your home tonight, and may He send a little miracle your way just when you need it most. God bless you, and thank you for watching.